that really validates my person. When the green dot shows up and it's like, excellent connection. Thank you.
Is that like wasn't it a green dot in The Great Gatsby, like in the distant for West? Did you ever read that book or no? It's just okay if you didn't.
Yes. Hey there, theater makers, and welcome back to another episode of Theater's Not Dead with Keyanna Alexander. I am your host, Keyanna Alexander. Now, before we hop into our continuing of Reshaping Othello, couple of updates for everybody. Yes, we are still on coffee, so make sure that you are checking out the page to catch my exclusive blog, Key Thoughts. I don't know why I said it like that. Also, some general shenanigans, some extra photos, some behind-the-scenes info, all that good stuff, including the link to our merch. Yes, we have merch. All that information, again, is at our coffee page, and you can follow us on all the socials down in the description. Make sure you are liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and hitting the bell so that you get notifications for when everything is going live. Now, we are today continuing Reshaping Othello, a series that is quickly becoming one of my favorites. So many insightful guests, so many exciting guests. Speaking of exciting, who do we have on today? Everyone, I am so excited to be speaking with Ayanna Thompson. She is the Regents Professor of English at Arizona State University and the director of the Arizona Center for Medieval and Renaissance Studies. Wait, who? Is it the Othello Whisperer? Yes, everyone, that is right. And here she is.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. And by morning, everyone, she does mean morning. It's what time there right now?
It's 8 a.m. But look, I get up and showered and cleaned just for you, Keyanna.
Thank you. I feel so validated and so special. Thank you. Wow. Okay. 1, thank you for being on the show. 2, I will be actively fangirling throughout the show, so please forgive me if weird noises start to come out of my mouth. I promise they're all positive. We like to start every episode off with asking people their theater origin story. So, Ayanna, how did you get started in theater?
So weirdly, I think my first professional show to see was, I grew up working class poor right outside of Baltimore. And my mother came into a little bit of money and we went to Europe for a 2-week trip in the summer. And she said, we're going to go to Stratford, to Shakespeare's birthplace. And I was a teenager and I was like, what? Why? No. But we saw a production of Romeo and Juliet at the Royal Shakespeare Company, starring Sean Bean as Romeo and the great Black British actor Hugh Quarshie as Tybalt. And they were wearing black leather suits and were riding around on motorcycles and convertibles on stage. And I was like, this is Shakespeare. It's so sexy. Like, these people are really, really hot. And I had a poster from that production up in my room throughout college. So strange kind of beginning, because I didn't have any innate love of Shakespeare. And yet I think looking back, it's pretty formative for me.
I have to ask the follow-up question. Do you still have the poster?
No, and I really want it. I know. I think 4 years in college, like the ends got like ripped, and so I threw it away. But yeah, it was a gorgeous poster too. I can still see it in my mind.
All right, internet sleuths. I think we have given you enough details. Go forth, find the poster, and then let us know. You can email us at notdeadwithkeyanna@gmail.com when you have obtained it, and then we will make sure to get it to Ayanna.
And I think the production was like 1986, so that'll give you even more clues.
Okay.
That's probably the year that Keyanna was born, or before you were born.
We're not even going to get into it. We're just going to bypass that whole thing.
So we're just like, no, we'll skip that.
Nope. I was born in 75. There we go.
Oh, you look good.
Thank you, girl. Wow. Okay. So you got the like dream Shakespeare experience right off the gate.
Yeah, yeah, I did. But it didn't translate instantly to like, oh, and that means Shakespeare's awesome. I just kind of put it away as like this sexy thing I had seen, but it wasn't really like part of who, like I went on to be an investment banker. That was my first job. So like working as a, someone who works in theaters or who is an English professor was not on the horizon because that was not, I wanted to make money. So like I was going to be the female version of Gordon Gekko. That's how shallow I was.
Look, I mean, we love big dreams.
But yeah,
Motivations aside, we love big dreams.
yes. Yeah. That's the positive spin on it.
So I think this is the first time. Well, I'll ask you the question. So, have you ever like performed or directed in a well, I'm sure you've directed, but have you ever performed in a Shakespearean work?
No, I've never performed in a Shakespearean work, but I did a lot of musical theater. And like I actively loved performing in musical theater. I loved it, loved it, loved it. But I never did any Shakespeare acting, and I've never directed anything. I've dramaturged a couple of productions, but not a lot. So, yeah. So really, my work has been primarily, as a scholar on the outside, and then being brought in as a consultant.
Which I think also just gives you the like bandwidth to have the expertise that you do have because you're not worried about like juggling performances or directing. You're like, no, this is what I do because you do it so well.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, I think, I love being a scholar and I love doing research and that kind of work. But I have figured out over the years that the practice that gets put on stage, I love having a say or being part of those conversations as much as I love the research. But I don't think I would like it on its own. Like as you say, like the bandwidth, I don't think I could be a journeyman. like, no, I don't have the fortitude for that.
I think we've kind of touched on this, but I want to formally ask you the question. What is your relationship to Shakespeare and his works?
Right. So I'm technically, by my profession, a Shakespeare scholar. I work at a university, at Arizona State University, the best university in the world right now. Very happy and proud to be there. And I teach undergraduates and graduates. I teach kind of regular intro to Shakespeare classes. I teach graduate courses on Shakespeare and performance. I teach graduate courses on how to teach Shakespeare. So that's what I do in my job in terms of my own research. I've worked on both the history of racial thinking in the UK and US, and then also kind of thinking through performance implications with an eye towards race.
Which brings us to Race Before Race. Could you explain to our audience what that program is and what its goals are?
Yeah, so Race Before Race is an amazing, I mean, I'm so proud of what it's become, but it was meant to be it was going to be a little symposium because there were a bunch of medievalists of color, so BIPOC scholars who work on medieval literature, who had proposed a bunch of panels at their big international conference on race in medieval literature and culture. And all their panels were rejected. And I'm running this research center. And I was like, wow, when I heard about this, I was like, well, I've run a center, so I can run like a little conference. So I thought I'll put them in touch with the Shakespeare scholars who are working on race, because we've been doing it a little bit longer than the medievalists. So we have a kind of deeper bench. And I was like, so we could have like a kind of productive conversation between all these amazing BIPOC scholars, both the most senior people like me and Kim Hall, who's a shout out to Kim if she's watching, but also to early career scholars, including graduate students. And I thought maybe we'd have 40 people in attendance. 300 people came. So that just showed you the hunger for what we're doing. And it's grown into this amazing network and publishing venue. So we do 2 events a year. One is always at Arizona State and another is at whatever institution wants to partner with us. So we've partnered with the Folger. Brandeis is hosting an event in May with Ibram Kendi as our keynote speaker. So if you want to watch it, it's virtual. The theme is politics. So yeah, it's exciting. There's so many great BIPOC scholars working on the longer history of race. And I think, basically they've got knowledge that I think actors and directors would love to know about.
Oh, absolutely. As soon as you were describing it, I said, yes, sign me up. Who do I give my money to?
It's free. And by the way, all Race Before Race events are free. So, and you can see a lot of the videos on YouTube if you just look for ACMRS is the acronym of my research center. And then Race Before Race, and you can find a lot of the talks there for free. And then if you want to attend either virtually or in person starting next year, they're all free.
So good. So good. We will be sure to include links of that below as well so that you can check out all of those resources. I don't think I've ever said this on the show. Starting in high school, I had a very unhealthy obsession with Dante's Inferno. Mm-hmm. So if I'm just tossing it out there, if there is a scholar of color who knows about that, it might be at Race Before Race. Just
I'll make a love connection, an intellectual love connection. Yes.
So good. So good. And then I'll just actively fangirl in front of that person, and the cycle will continue. We love this.
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay. Also another bit or comment about starting Race Before Race, because I am so fascinated and just really intrigued by this project. We had an entire series that we did last season called Women Do the Damn Thing. And I think this is another perfect example of looking at the industry and identifying a huge hole in it and saying, don't worry, I'll fix it myself.
Yeah. And, right. And I think on the upside is we are creative thinkers, we're expansive thinkers, we imagine a better future. The downside is it's exhausting. It comes at a real cost, right? I had to hustle to get money for this. I had to hustle to get underwriting. But that's okay. That's okay. But yes.
Is it hard? Yes. Is it worth it? Yes.
Yes.
But that doesn't fix the hard part.
That's right. And I think, I'm waiting for my reparations, academic reparations.
And it's been said.
I know. And there are definitely theatrical reparations due. I'm going to put that out into the universe as well.
You know what? Just all around, just go ahead, write us those checks. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. Okay. Your talking points are such perfect segues into my questions, and I appreciate this collaboration that's happening here. Speaking of a Black woman doing the damn thing, how do you approach and deconstruct Shakespeare's works as a Black woman?
Yeah. So I think I've been out about this for a few years now, so it doesn't feel as scary revealing it, but I was not trained as a Shakespeare scholar. I was trained as a post-colonial scholar and an African-Americanist. And so when you go to graduate school, they make you focus on something and then you end as an expert. I focused on a whole bunch of different things and then got spit out as a Shakespeare person, but I hadn't done any coursework in Shakespeare. I wasn't really, my dissertation wasn't about Shakespeare. So I feel like at first, when I started my career as an early career scholar, I felt very insecure because I was like, I don't have all the historical knowledge. Like, I just didn't have the deep knowledge that uh, people in my field were supposed to have. And then at some point, I realized, oh my God, this is an amazing benefit because I'm looking at all the texts with a different tool set. Like, I'm looking at them through a post-colonial lens, or I'm looking at them through a radical Black feminist lens. Like, that makes them different. And so I think that because I wasn't trained in the traditional methods, that I was naturally looking, or maybe not naturally, but through my training, was looking at them through many different lenses that brought race to the center of all of my discussions. And so it never felt like I was putting it on to Shakespeare, because I was like, well, if you know bell hooks, then that's how you're going to read, you know, Titus Andronicus or Othello or Romeo and Juliet, where there's all these horrible insults about Black people. You know what I mean? Like, Juliet's gorgeous because she's not Black, right? Like, that's what Romeo says, you know? So anyway, I just felt like, once, if you've read all this other stuff, all these other theories, Edward Said to bell hooks to Audre Lorde to Toni Morrison, you come at the text differently. So I have always, I think I call it read, like from Richard II, he says, I awry. I feel like I've always come at them I awry, like I'm looking at them side eye. So yes, that is how that's how I was trained, because I wasn't trained in the field. So it feels very natural to me to look at them with race at the center, with class at the center, with gender at the center, with ability at the center. These are things that you know you will bring if you're not trained as a Shakespeare scholar. At least when I was trained, things are changing now.
Absolutely. I do want to make a note here. I awry. I'm looking at him side eye. Can we get that on a T-shirt or
Yes.
on
Yeah.
merch? Like,
Yes.
there's just
Yes.
it, and it almost, it's like a slant rhyme type of vibes too. Like, that's a perfect quote for a T-shirt.
I love it. I love it. Yes, Theater Not Dead merch. Do it. Do it.
Producer Hannah Williams, can you make that note? Thank you. Um, that also is really intriguing to me, though, because so much of Shakespeare's work just talks about race, usually in a very negative light, in a very,
Yes.
as someone who just finished doing a production of Midsummer Night's Dream, the
Mm.
amount of like, you're beautiful because you're fair,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, what is he really saying here?
Yeah.
Type of
Yeah.
stuff. So I am curious to hear how other scholars and other Shakespearean experts reacted to your approach to his work with such a specific race related lens.
It was immediate acceptance and hearts and flowers. I was given a no. Like, are you like? I was like, I do look back and I'm like, it is amazing that I stuck in the field, because there was so much resistance. And I mean, I actually I remember I was in at a conference one year. I won't name the person, but he has since died. He was an older scholar. And I had given a paper kind of thinking through blackface in and early modern productions. And he pointed his wizened finger at me and he goes, he wouldn't say my name. He just said, how dare you use the word blackface? You know, that's anachronistic. How dare you try and make these pieces look as if they're racist? And I was like, I was like trying to work through what the relationship is, but there was a lot of resistance. But there were a few key people who pulled me aside when I was first going to these conferences. Kim Hall, who I've mentioned already, Arthur Little, who's a professor at UCLA, and Peter Erickson, who taught for a long time at Northwestern. They all independently pulled me aside and they're like, you are doing important work. Don't give up. And so I don't know. And maybe it was because I had worked on Wall Street where like the sexism and racism was so overt. Like it wasn't subtext, it was text. So I was kind of like the Shakespeareans were like a little light in their in their resistance. So I stuck through it. And then at some point there were all these younger people and they were saying things at the same conference years before where I had been berated and ignored and whatever, who were citing me and constantly saying that I was influencing their work. And I was like, what has happened? Like, like I went from being like literally the person. Oh, so here's another great story. I was at a conference and the organizer was like, and yes, I've been invited to guest edit a special edition of Shakespeare Survey, which is a famous, fancy journal. And he goes, and you are all invited to be in my special edition, except for you, Ayanna, because you don't fit in. He said this in public. So I was used to that. Yes, exactly. I was used to that level of resistance. And then all of a sudden it felt like immediate, like, a few years later, there are these younger scholars who are like, and the work I'm doing is all influenced by Ayanna Thompson and Kim Hall and Arthur, not just me, but so the tide turned. And now I do think it's pretty much acknowledged in our field that early modern and pre-modern critical race studies is at the forefront of Shakespeare studies. We're pushing our field in new, exciting directions. And that's what everyone now is expected to know. It's pretty amazing.
Pretty amazing. I'm not going to put that on a t-shirt, but that is definitely a quote as well. Like, just, we'll put it on the website somewhere. Like, how pivotal it is to, like, be doing the work that you are and how it is shaping our industry right now. Like, that, to me, I don't know if you can measure just how much this work is influencing artists, is creating a new foundation for us to work off of outside of the, oh, fair Hermia, how lovely is your pale skin? Like,
I'd marry her were she an Ethiop from Much Ado. Well, yeah, so this right after the unbelievable murder of George Floyd, which I think did wake us up for a moment. I hope we stay woke. I don't know. But there were a lot of theater companies that reached out to me who were like, who's doing work on Shakespeare and race? Oh my God, we have to start thinking about this. Because the artists and practitioners are now demanding changes in the industry. So I will say, like, I didn't accept a lot of the invitations because I was like, I don't know that, you've not really been committed to this in the past, so I don't know where you're going to go in the future. But there have been a few institutions that I am actively working with. So the Public Theater in New York, Red Bull Theater, I think they are really trying to make change and difference. I'm newly appointed to the board of the Royal Shakespeare Company, which is weird. This is like all the way back to me at age 13, seeing Sean Bean and Q Corshi. So there are theaters that are trying to change, and the industry, I think, is trying to change. We'll see, right? Because Keyanna, sometimes you can talk the talk, but if you don't walk that walk, it's empty rhetoric. I am not interested in empty rhetoric anymore. You have to make structural change. You have to make real structural change. If you want to be an actively anti-racist theater institution, you've got to change every aspect of your theater. From the person who books the tickets, to the lighting designer, hello, light black skin, to the people who do makeup and hair. We shouldn't have to do our own hair. I mean, this has all been discussed in We See White American Theater, which was such a brilliant document. But like that, if you want to claim this rhetoric, then you have to do some hard, and it's not easy work.
Absolutely.
It's hard. Structural change is hard.
I think that there's a lot of wonderful work currently happening around decolonizing theater practices and identifying theater RE. Hot takes from Keyanna. Theater RE, y'all, was founded on white supremacy philosophy. So any practice within it, if you're not interrogating and choosing to not be racist in every decision, the default, the tradition is white supremacy. So just kind of acknowledging
Yes.
that and working through that has been very hard for theater companies. And as we are approaching the 1 year mark of all of these people sending out these anti-racist, we stand with you types of like PSAs or press releases, as we approach that 1 year mark, how many people actually follow through with what those documents say?
And how many, when there's the sudden rush to open, which is happening soon, and they're going to say, oh, but we can't be at full capacity, and we're at the we had this thing in the can that now we have to, like, the set's on the stage, so we can't take it down, we need to start with that white supremacist production that we already have. Like, right, that's what I'm looking to see, because the moment when they open, there is going to be some backsliding, and we have to keep the pressure on to say it's not okay. You cannot return. I don't care if that's you sunk some money into this bad white supremacist project. Like, let that go.
The dramaturg for the current Othello production that Women's Theater Festival is working on, she made Monet Marshall. Hi, friend, if you're watching. She made an excellent point of like, okay, y'all, everyone keeps saying we're going back to normal, but what is that normal?
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? Because if it's the normal I'm thinking it is, I don't want it.
Yeah. No, we have to go to an Afrofuturist moment. Like, we cannot go back to what it was. And I think there has to be some real reckoning as opposed to rhetorical reckoning. So yes, yes. And your group is doing such amazing work. Yay. I'm really happy about the work you guys are doing.
Did we just get approval from
Yeah.
Ayanna
No, you got
Thompson?
no, you got fangirled from Ayanna Thompson.
All
You
right.
act as if it's one direction. No, it's mutual.
Okay, everyone act natural, don't. Okay, we're fine. Keyanna, you have to continue the show. Um, okay, so let's talk about Othello. We were talking about a lot of general Shakespeare, but let's get into Othello because I think this is one of the pieces with the most blatant racism. First off, I mean, look at the dynamics of the show. So I would love to just kind of open the floor to you to talk about like what are some of the biggest points you have to make when you are doing consultations for people on Othello. And yeah, let's just start there.
So the reason that I get consulted quite a bit is that poor Black male actors are told from drama school on that this is the part to which they should aspire, right? So white actors get to build from, Mercutio to Romeo to whatever, to the Guys and Two Gentlemen, all the way up to Hamlet, King Lear, right? You get a whole full spectrum. Whereas Black actors are like, okay, and then think about when you're playing Othello. So in their minds, it's like the pinnacle. And then when they get to achieve this part, they're all excited. The part is smaller than Iago's. So the white director, it's always a white director. It's always a white director. The white director is spending more time with the white Othello. With the white Iago. Black male Othello is getting less time. is feeling more isolated. The show starts, the audience is on Iago's side because the structure of the play is such that Iago makes the audience complicit, right? He tells the audience what he's going to do, and then he does it, and we are watching him dupe Othello. This is the only Shakespearean tragedy in which the titular star knows less than the audience. That's a comic structure. It's a comic structure, right? How do you make people laugh? You tell them, I'm going to play a joke on this person, and then you do it. Like, that's funny, right? That's the structure of Othello. And so this is the only Shakespearean tragedy that's set up in this way. In Hamlet, we know the same amount as Hamlet. King Lear, I mean, we might disapprove of his decisions, but we know the same amount as him. Macbeth, same thing, right? It's not like the witches come, you know what I mean? It's not like there's not a moment when they're like, now watch us fuck with Macbeth. You know, like that's so anyway, so this poor Black actor is feeling kind of besieged. And so many of them, about 1/3 of the way in the run, will have a kind of personal breakdown. And so then, you know, there's Google and and then they're like, who knows about this? Oh, Ayanna. And then I get called in to talk to them. So recently I was brought in before a production was fully cast. And the only people who had been cast were the Iago and the Othello. And they brought me in, I talked with them and the director, and I was like, be careful, it's going to tip into comedy, be careful. The dynamics, this poor actor is going to feel vulnerable and isolated, and he's going to think it's about race, and the audience is primarily white. So I tried to lay out all the problems, and they're like, oh, it's so fascinating talking to a scholar. Oh my God, it's so, and then like kind of patted me on the head and we've got this. Don't you know that Black actor? I saw him and he was having the personal breakdown 1/3 of the way through. I was like, he's like, you did tell me everything. I was like, yes, but why didn't you guys listen? So, I mean, there's so many issues. Like, how do we train actors? Why are we telling these poor Black men that this is the role that they should aspire to? Why don't they get to be Romeo, Hamlet, whoever, Titania? I don't care who it is, right? A. B, I think we should have a Othello hiatus. We're not really at a moment where we can fully deconstruct the structure of the play successfully. And C, I think it's a great piece to teach. I love teaching. So I'm not saying ban Othello. I just would like us to teach it and talk about it, but not necessarily see it in the same way over and over and over again. Now, the dynamics do change when a group like yours has primarily BIPOC actors, and that does help. And Red Bull did an amazing series in October where it was like the whole month of October, every Wednesday, we did bits of Othello with an all BIPOC cast. And that's on YouTube as well, if you want to see it. But that was also unbelievably productive because we could talk through all the emotional stuff that people had that usually gets silenced. So for example, Jennifer, I think her name is Jennifer Akita. I'm sorry if I'm getting it wrong. An amazing Asian American actress. And she was saying, I've never been considered for Desdemona, and nor would I ever be. She goes, but this is an interesting role. So there's so many interesting dynamics. So I don't know. I can go on and on about Othello. Sorry, that was probably more than you wanted.
No, literally, I'm just basking in the knowledge. So thank you. But yes, I agree with you that the dynamics do change drastically when you are putting other people of color in the supporting ensemble roles of Othello instead of making it like a group of white people with the one Black Othello.
Yeah.
Because now those numbers are skewed to me, right? Like exactly what you're saying. Iago is planning these things, these horrid things to have the downfall of a black person. And then all the other characters either help or feign ignorance or turn a blind eye.
Or actively complicit, Amelia.
Oh, Amelia.
Right, yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I think, the poetry and language of Shakespeare's plays are often so gorgeous and strong, and also part of our idioms, right? Like, Shakespeare sounds familiar because his plays have been taught for 400 years. So it's part of our language. But the structure of that play and the kind of racial dynamics of the play are not good. They're bad. They're actively bad. It's a racist play. There are ways to make it less racist. So that can happen, and you can still bask in the glory of the language, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's actively anti-racist work. And I think that's the kind of question that we need to pose now. Like, if we want to do actively anti-racist theater, how and where do we put Shakespeare? And I don't think that's an easy answer. And I think a lot of classical theater companies are struggling with that right now. And I think about Nataki Garrett, the amazing Black feminist who's running the Oregon Shakespeare Festival now. By the way, we are childhood friends, so we've known each other since we were 3. But I think, when that theater opens up, I think she will struggle, because her DNA is radical Black feminism. And I think there will be a tension, I imagine, going forward about how to create actively anti-racist theater that includes Shakespeare. It's not going to be, it's not an easy overlay. That does not mean that I am saying cancel Shakespeare, by the way. I know you alt-right media. I was just targeted by them a couple weeks ago they cherry-picked a quote out of something and claimed that I was trying to cancel Shakespeare. And I'm like, my whole career is on Shakespeare. So I don't, so it's not that I'm saying we need to cancel it, but I am saying that the dialogues around what we want to do going forward, 2021 to 2051, I hope is going to be different about than what just happened from 1951 to 2021. We have to do something different.
Absolutely. I mean, one could argue we should have been doing something different, but
girl.
But you know what? We're here now. All right.
And this is the moment that, and let's keep it real. Like, the Black arts movement was awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. And what is that taught? It's like it didn't happen. America can erase shit so successfully. And my whole life has been about, we cannot continue with this historical amnesia with regards to race. We've already fought this battle. We fought this battle in the 1960s.
Yes. I feel very guilty because I can't remember where I read this article, nor can I remember the author, so I'm trying not to plagiarize. But the core of the argument this writer was making was kind of similar to what you're saying now. We fought to be seen, to be recognized, to be protected. We fought for this already. And we had white allies then.
Yes.
Where did they go?
Yeah. Well, if we want to do a theater history, I do think Reagan and Thatcher were not our friends. And the 1980s erased so much of what happened in the 1960s and 50s. And yeah, so.
I have this very distinct memory of being a freshman at North Carolina Central University. Shout out to all my HBCUs. And learning for the first time about the federal theater program. and
Yes.
having my mind blown. And
Yes.
then as we're continuing the lesson, all I can think about is, but why did we stop? If
And
it
why aren't
was,
we doing it right now? Why is there, we've got a 1.9 billion stimulus package that does not have a federal theater project in it? I don't understand. Like it was amazing. It did great work. 10,000 Harlemites showed up to Macbeth opening night 1936 at the Lafayette Theater. 10,000 people, Black Americans, showed up for opening night of Macbeth. Like, you know,
you can't make that up.
you cannot make it up, right? Yeah.
I,
150 people in the cast, 150 people were employed. Yeah, I
so
mean, right. And the other thing, and maybe you know this, or maybe this will blow your mind too, that in 1982, my good friend and revolutionary theater maker Peter Sellers got the U.S. government to appoint him as the head of a national theater for the U.S. You know how long it lasted? 18 months. They fired him after 18 months because he was doing all the things that we said that we wanted to return to, which was like doing experimental theater by BIPOC artists, having free theater for people in Washington, D.C., having, challenging classical pieces put on with different abled bodies. Like he was one of the first to have a deaf actor in a classical production. These things during the Reagan era, because it was 1982 to 1983, were like, he was like the most hated person in America that year. But he did it. And that's a history. Like we had a national theater, the only time in the US that we've had a national theater. UK has a great national theater. Germany, amazing national theaters. We are like, what? We don't want to have a national theater? This is crazy.
I think that's what's so infuriating. Other countries have these things and they operate just fine. Some could even argue exceptionally well. And yet the US always looks at those programs like, that's a European thing. We're not going to do that.
But we did have it. We
But we
did
do.
have it. That's the hard part. That's the and so I don't anyway. Kamala, I'm calling out to you. Can't you make this happen?
Hi, excuse me, Miss Harris. I just wanted to check in with you real quick about that federal theater. Thank you. Um, okay, well, before I get any more infuriated, we're gonna move on to the next question. And you've kind of hit on this already, going back to shout out to you being one of the greatest guests I've ever had on here. What productions of Shakespeare's works really stand out in your memory? And this could be good or bad performances. Like
Ooh, I don't want to
who really
trash anybody.
stands out?
I've seen so much bad theater. And my partner, who is also a Shakespeare scholar, he's a white British man and like an amazing scholar, works on history of language. He hates theater. And so when we got together, he's like, oh God, do I have to go to theater? And so a lot of times I'll look at him halfway through it and I'm like, oh, this is bad. And he's like, of course it's bad. But good ones. I think there have been a few. All right. So I've been meaning to publish an article about this, and I've given a couple of talks over the years about, there's a German production of Othello in 2009, starring Susanna Wolf, who's a white German actress, as Othello without racial prosthetics. And at first, in one scene, she dons a full gorilla costume. So when I first saw still images from the production, I was like, what the fuck? These Germans are so insensitive and, blah, blah. But actually watching the production, because the theater very graciously sent me a digital recording. It was very, like, I felt like it's probably the best production of Othello I've ever seen. Not because it's perfect, but because it challenges a lot of the performance tropes that we've gotten trapped in the US and the UK. And it's thinking through racialization as an opportunistic and kind of mutable force. So it's not necessarily that it's necessary about Black bodies, but about the way that society codes some people at some times as being racialized. Hello, look at the violence against Asian American women recently. So I think that production was pretty phenomenal. And so that's at the Deutsches Theater in Berlin in 2009. I also loved Ivo van Hove's Kings of War, like, which did, I forget, it was like the Henry the Fourths and Richard the Second and Richard the Third. And the Richard the Third was probably the most terrifying. Like, I've never been scared in a theater, like I'm often like happy or sad or quizzical, those kind of emotions, but I don't think I've felt fear. And this Richard III was unbelievably psychotic. And what they did is they had a mirror on stage, and he would just look at himself periodically in the mirror and like kind of experience himself disassociated. And it was terrifying. Anyway, so I thought that, but also I was like, why are they all white? I know they're Dutch, but come on. Like, so that's the Toneel group. Then there was a production of Titus Andronicus, actually 2 productions of Titus Andronicus that I've loved. One was a tiny, tiny, tiny production in Washington, D.C. at Gallaudet University, which is the deaf university in D.C. And the actor who played Lavinia was deaf signing. And when her hands were cut off, she couldn't sign anymore. And it was unbelievably hard. And the production, which was leaning into the commedia dell'arte genre, tried to make it somewhat funny, but even the way they used commedia made it even more emotive for me. And so when Titus is like, shall I speak for thee? Shall I say 'tis true? She's like, she's like, no, you can't, you can't sign for me. It was great. So that was like a tiny little production, was amazing. And also Aaron's Baby. So Aaron was a Black actor in a commedia, like half white, half Black face. And the baby doll they had the exact same paint. It was hilarious and effective. So shout out to, that was Faction of Fools, was the tiny theater company who did that. Shout out to them. And then the Public did a production of Titus with Ron Cephas Jones as Aaron, directed by Michael Sexton, that was also really, really profoundly moving. So those would be my highlights.
Whew, so good. I am really upset that I did not get to see these productions for myself. I am currently at a crossroads, just full transparency, of do I ask you another question or do we hop into closing remarks? But I think we're going to dive into one more question. Here we go.
Okay.
Hi. We are doing a Othello production that was adapted by someone I think that you know.
I know Anthony Udopia, brilliant playwright. And she did a translation of Othello in the Play On series, and I was her dramaturg. So along with, there was another dramaturg who actually is a dramaturg. So I was like kind of like data dump about everything around Othello and minstrelsy. And he was the person who's like, and let me tell you how to make good theater. Because I'm like, I don't know how to make good theater. I just can tell you, I can just drop some knowledge. So yes, how's the production going? And who are you playing?
Oh, the production going so well. I'm so excited for all the work that is currently happening in the rehearsal space. Do I know everything that is happening in the rehearsal space? No, because I'm not performing in this one. I'm actually the TD. So okay. I'm doing some, speaking of experimental BIPOC theater, I'm doing some experimental things in the programming and the building of the show itself, which will be revealed at a later date via blog post. But it's been fascinating to see the experimental work that our director, Jamaica Holloway, is working on, and how, like, going back to your point, the director of Othello is always a white man. So having a black woman directing this and saying, we're going to look at the show from a radical black femme lens makes it completely different show than what I think I traditionally see it presented as. So, yes, the show.
And will this be a virtual performance? You need to tell it. Let's promote this performance because A, I want to support your theater, and B, Enfaniso needs lots of love.
Yes. So we are doing this 100% virtual. So the actors range all across the country, which makes scheduling so much fun. But yeah, so we are all in these cute little Zoom squares and experimenting with how do we connect with our scene partners and how do we connect with the audience. And one of the things that I am the most excited about is how much care is going into the Black audience experience. So we are curating like virtual care packages for people, with like helping them digest and interrogate all the racism that they are seeing on their screens. And
That's amazing. Like, this has got to be a first, because I'm telling you, every theater that I've worked with, they only ever conceptualize their audience as being white audience members. And so when you put Black audiences at the heart of the experience, that changes everything. And you're right, like care needs to be shown, cultivated, shared.
So it's just it's a lot. So I'm not going to get into like all the nitty gritty stuff, but like virtual care packages and having like a actual decompression room during intermission, like stuff like that. So I'm saying we as a collective, but like so much of this is coming out of the production team. So shout out to Jamaica and Shay Lamar and Tara. Like, that triad of brilliant minds has been the people who like said, these Black people are not leaving this production feeling a type of way. We're not letting it happen.
But and hopefully this sets a trend for other theater companies going forward. That's incredibly important. Yes. So yay. All right.
Okay. So by the way, everyone, tickets for Othello, guess what? They're on sale. You can buy one right now at this moment. Maybe not right now because finish watching the episode. But link is below. So go ahead, click that up in the next tab so that you can cue that for whenever we're done here. Speaking of, hi. How are we feeling about jumping into shout outs and where people can find you?
Let's do it.
Okay.
I'm feeling good. Of course, I could talk to you for hours, but but you probably need to have lunch and I need to have breakfast.
Please, I want you to have breakfast. I want you to maybe take a nap.
Like a breakfast burrito.
But yeah, so where can people find your work? And then what are you currently working on?
Yes, so you can find all of my books and links to podcasts and not films, like YouTube and other stuff, radio things, at my personal website, which is AyannaThompson.com. So it's very easy, AyannaThompson.com. You can get my new book, Blackface, which comes out on April 8th. So that's the newest work. If you want, my other new book is The Cambridge Companion to Shakespeare and Race, which really walks you through everything you need to know about Shakespeare and race if you are a teacher or student or a practitioner. There's a great essay by Adrian Lester, the amazing Black British actor who played Othello at the National. So there are lots of amazing essays about like, how does race work in the comedies? How does race work in the tragedies? How does race work in the histories? How does race work in the specific plays? How do we think about performance history? So that book really lays it out for you. So Cambridge Companion to Shakespeare and Race. I'm working on a new project about virtuosity in acting and how and why actors of color rarely get coded as being virtuosos and instead get coded as being charismatic.
Ooh.
So that's going to take a little while. I've been giving a talk about the beginning of the project, so that's available. But so that's where I am.
Wow. Okay. So, one, thank you for sharing so much of your knowledge and experience with us today regarding Shakespeare and specifically Othello. Wow. I do want to ask you one more question. I'm so sorry. This is going
Go
longer than we
ahead.
anticipated.
No, it's good.
The title, Othello Whisperer, how did that come to be?
I actually don't know, but I forget. It was one of the actors said, he's like, "You're the Othello whisperer." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess that is." It's like, because I'm the person who's like, it's not just you. This happens to everyone who does this part. Let me tell you all like, no, you're not less than. It's the structure of the play that's making you feel this way. So I feel like I know, I can't remember exactly which actor it was who called me that. And I was like, I'm keeping it.
It is by far one of the coolest titles anyone could ever have. So 3 cheers, friend. I love that for you.
3 cheers back to you, friend. And thank you for the great work you're doing. It's so important.
Thank you. Wow. As we mentioned, we honestly could talk for hours, but we're going to wrap it up here. Everyone, thank you for watching this episode and for going on this journey with me today. Thank you, Ayanna. Like, again, no words. Stop fangirling, Keyanna. You have to finish the episode. Be sure to check us out on Ko-fi, where you can get links to our merch. Yes, there is merch. Maybe merch with quotes from Ayanna on them soon. Stand by. And we also have a blog, Key Thoughts. I promise we're going to have some updates on there, including what I am doing for the tech of Othello. That's going to be on the Ko-fi page. So you're going to want to follow that to get those information. Like this video. Smash the subscribe button. Hit the bell so you know when we're going live, which is always Tuesdays, Eastern Standard Time, 11 a.m. But just in case you didn't know that, I think that's everything for now. Thanks everybody. And just in case anyone still has questions, guess what? Theater's not dead. See you next time.